I'm in a hotel today in
We can tell.
beautiful Orlando, Florida.
4 seasons, no?
Yes, yeah, first class all the way for me. Absolutely. This might be more like the 1 season or 2 season. I'm not sure. But I'm at a with a client, but it's a trade show. It's a big air conditioning and heating trade show, and I got to say, your people very well represented here.
Oh, I could imagine.
There are. I've been the number of payas I've seen walking around the show. It's been impressive. There's got to be a kosher food stand somewhere at this point.
Oh, sure.
Of course. Minion. I'm sure they're having minion.
Yes.
No question. Come on, then. The heat and cooling is a Jewish business.
That's right.
Heating and cooling.
Did you tell everyone that you have an Orthodox podcast? You should have been like you. I bet you don't have an Orthodox podcast like I do.
I don't know if they would consider this Orthodox.
Yeah.
Not the guy who's
I
dealing with it.
was going around looking to see if I could find any Chabad folks, but I didn't see anybody that looked Chabad.
There may be.
So
There may be. I don't know.
but
Actually, my husband, I was telling my husband about it because I was saying, do you know anybody who's in Orlando? And he said, oh, we usually go to that show, his company. And
oh, really?
Yeah, but he's the guy who does the shows for them is in Panama on vacation. So he didn't
So
go.
there goes for the
no kidding. Oh, that's
show.
funny.
This
Yeah.
is called Yeshiva Week. It's there's vacation this week for all the yeshivas. So he's with his family.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
All right.
because the yeshivas have a separate vacation from others,
Yeah.
from regular people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if just in case the recording gets messed up today, because I'm on the 1 season's internet, it's it might pose some recording issues this week.
Sorry.
I tell you, I don't know. I'm going to be like a little off today, to be honest with you.
Why?
I'm just mesmerized by the lamps behind him. I mean that's like I'm talking about where'd they get that from? Like Archie Bunker's house when he closed up in like the 70s. I mean, like
God.
I would not be surprised.
So
I would not be surprised if that's the case, actually.
Well, I'm just remembering, and we should
surprised.
start, but I'm just remembering when Rudy Giuliani had that press conference in front of the Four Seasons, except it wasn't the Four Seasons Hotel. It was the Four Seasons
nightclub.
No, like gardening.
Gardening. Yeah.
It was really uncomfortable. Anyway. Okay. So we are going to cover a very difficult topic today. Has lots of layers and lots of people's personal feelings, and but it's worthwhile. I think it's worthwhile diving into it. It's definitely a big conversation in our culture, and it's something that applies to a significant amount of people who deal with this in different ways. So we don't shy away from difficult conversations here. So today,
are we talking about brunch? Eating brunch?
You wish that's the topic because you are dreading this, but no.
Shucks.
We are we're putting you on the spot today, and we're going to talk about abortion and other kind of pregnancy-related issues and parenting a little bit, and we'll see where the conversation goes. As per usual, we sometimes meander off in different directions, but I think we'll start with what does the Torah say about abortion? How is it framed in the Torah? And we'll go from there.
So before we get to that, I just want to say one thing that, Chayalea and I, we have talked for a while about doing this topic, and we kind of put it off and didn't, we said, we can do that later because we really didn't want to touch it. But this week, Kat Rosenfield, and I assume most of our listeners know who Kat is, but Kat's, she's a journalist or a commentary person who writes for the Free Press. You should definitely check her out. She wrote a really long piece for the Free Press a couple days ago about the effects of losing pregnancies on men, and highlighted a bunch of men who've gone through either wives having wives or girlfriends having miscarriages, or them having abortions and their feelings about that, and so I felt like it was a good time to have the discussion because it was an article that really resonated with me. Just to be personal for a second, my wife, and it's funny even when you talk about it, because I'll say like my wife and I had miscarriages, which is it's weird to even say that because it feels like it's putting it's putting my feelings on par with hers, which it's not, but we had so like somewhere around 5 or 6 miscarriages, and honestly I lost count because there were so many. But so anyway, so I read this article, and I wanted to talk about the article, and so we kind of agreed it's probably a good week to talk about this topic. So
good. Yes.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Sure. Coming off our happiness podcast, and we slid right into another one.
So, I mean, I guess we can start off with the basics of just Jewish law around abortion. And I think there's a lot of confusion because in America, people often equate religiosity with the pro-life movement or being anti-abortion. And I think in Judaism, it's a little bit more complicated than that. So how does the Torah view abortion?
So, I mean, in America, this is definitely a hot button topic. You have to be very careful what you say because it deals with people's emotions, raw emotions. But basically what the Torah says is like this. There is no question that at conception, there is something that's living inside of the mother's womb. That's clearly the Torah. It's not considered a baby. It's considered a fetus, but it is a living matter. It has a soul. It gets a soul. As a matter of fact, the Talmud even goes even further by saying that there's an angel that rests with the fetus and teaches it the entire Torah while it's in its mother's womb. And so from that standpoint, it is living. It's a living thing. Okay, we're not going to call it a baby yet. Okay, so then comes the issue of the abortion. Okay. So the Torah says that if this is going to be an abortion for financial reasons, it's forbidden. Meaning that we can't afford the child, we're just going to end this life. It is absolutely forbidden to do that. There's no question about it. If it's for cosmetic purposes, I don't look good, I don't want to get fat, whatever the circumstances are, I want to wipe this thing out of my life, it is forbidden. It is a living thing, and you have to go through with the pregnancy. Now, what if this living thing causes damage to the mother or is threatening the mother's life? Meaning that, if we don't get rid of the pregnancy, we don't terminate the pregnancy, somehow the mother's life is in jeopardy. Here's where the Torah says the mother's life takes precedent over the fetus. Even if the fetus is 9 months old, the mother's life takes precedent. There is a concept in Torah called a rodef. A rodef is someone that's chasing another person in order to kill them. If you see a rodef, you don't have to ask any questions. You may take the rodef down and kill them. I mean, preferably you could stop them without killing them, fine. Now, great. But if you have to kill them and they're chasing an innocent life, the rodef has taken matters into his own hands, and he has created a mark on him that anyone can kill them. This is what the fetus is now considered. If it's going to kill the mother, and I use that term specifically, kill the mother is going to die, the fetus has now become a rodef. Right. He's going to kill the mother, and therefore, since the mother is already a living entity, and the child is not living on its own, even though it is living, but it's completely dependent upon the mother, for its sustenance. Therefore, we will take the life of the rodef, of the fetus before the mother. Okay, but this is an extreme case. I mean, right. The mother really has to be, in she has to be threatened by death. So that's generally the rule. So Judaism would forbid, abortion on demand, meaning like pro-choice would say, no, that doesn't matter, if she's raped or for this and this, and we will get to rape in a second, whatever circumstances are. But certainly on a case basis where it's abortion on demand, the Torah is pretty clear that it's not. We see also from the Torah that the fetuses are not considered living completely human beings, because there is a case of when if you hit a woman that's pregnant and she loses her children, there's not a penalty of death for that. It's a penalty of compensation. You have to pay the parents the damages. So if the fetuses were going to be worth, 100,000 shkolim or whatever we'll estimate, you have to pay the damages for them. But that's not the death penalty. You will not receive the death penalty for killing the fetuses, in this circumstance. So that's generally the rule. So when you say that, when people equate religion with the pro-life, they're probably right. Religion would be much more pro-life, that we would have to see the pregnancy through. And if you wanted to give it up for adoption, that's your choice afterwards. But you cannot abort. I mean, it's not, this is a living entity that you have to take very, very, very seriously.
So in the framework of how we talk about it in in the political world that we live in, right? I often get this question. I'm pushing on it because I get this question all the time from people. How would an Orthodox Jew, a traditional Jew, or any Jew who wants to follow the principles of the Torah, how would we view a judge or a law or anything, that would relate to abortion? Because I think it's not so, I don't think I feel comfortable. I'm just speaking for myself for a second, and then you could answer it. But I don't think I feel comfortable saying that I'm pro-life if that's going to take away the real possibility of somebody needing to have an abortion, even according to Jewish law. Right. So I think I would somehow distance myself from a Catholic person who feels, that it's a grave sin. But I don't know if I'm just making that up in my head or if that's the reality of how it should be.
Well, I think I'm not comfortable with the government taking care of any issue properly.
Well, correct.
I mean, because we know when we talked about in our issue,
a libertarian
in our issue about
exactly.
the death penalty, we came to the conclusion that we're not pro death penalty here in America because it doesn't work.
Right.
And the same thing is true with abortion. I don't want to take away the possibility of abortion. I want there to be a possibility of getting a legal abortion when it's necessary. I want to have that clear. But I would also want at this very same time that even when a woman goes into an abortion, I want counseling done.
Yeah.
I don't want her coming in. You can't say anything to her. She goes into the room and you wipe the slate clean. I want her to really think what you're doing. Not to pressure you, but I want at the very same time, because we know that after women get abortions, there's a lot of self-recrimination after that. Because and I think that we have made the fetus so innocuous. I mean, so nothing that it's like going in and having a colonoscopy. I'm going to have a colonoscopy. I'm going to have an abortion. I don't want that either.
Right.
So I want to find a happy place. Maybe, before you go into abortion, I want you to sit down with a counselor, and talk it through and make sure that what you're doing, and it's you're okay with it. Maybe go to your clergyman, maybe go to your rabbi, and at the end of the day, I want there to be a possibility that if it's needed, then you can have an abortion. Now, there are cases now that we understand that mental illness, is a very, very serious matter,
right?
And again, I'm not here to give you the definitive Torah view, but I just know that now we take this into consideration much more than we used to in the past.
Right.
If in the past a woman was ill, or she suffered from postpartum, or she suffered from melancholy, or she suffered from depression, we didn't care. So what? Have the kid, and the kid will make you happy.
Right.
Have it's your 14th. Look, perfect, wonderful. You have yourself almost a baseball team, 4 more, and you can field 2 teams. Get out there and do it.
God.
No one cared about how you felt or what you did, and that was not the issue. Today, we know that mental illness is a very serious thing. It affects not only the mother, it affects the remaining children in the family, affects the husband, it affects the parents, affects everybody. So rabbis will be much more willing to listen to situations. Like if the child is, we know that the child is going to be born with tremendous amount of, disabilities. The rabbis will listen, to it, and so on and so forth. So today it's a little bit more, not much. I'm not saying we're open to anything, but there is other possibilities besides the mother laying there on the 9th month, and dying, on the table, and the doctor says the only way to save her life is to cut the fetus into pieces. There's other circumstances where rabbis will listen to the possibility of abortion. So again, it's a very serious matter. I mean, and the fetus is a living thing. I mean, and we need to understand that, and we need to protect it as much as we can.
Yeah.
So as much as we can, we need to protect that. God has given a blessing to the parents, and we go from there.
So let me ask you about the concept of the Rodesh that you brought up. Rodesh.
No, with a PH.
Rodef. Rodef.
Yeah.
Rodef.
Okay.
I
don't even know how to spell.
Thanks, Hialeah. Thanks.
No. Rodef means a chaser. He's Rodef. Okay. He's chasing someone.
So the Rodef. Is there any consideration in Judaism for the timing of that? Between if it's 5 minutes after conception, or if it's 8 months and 3 weeks.
No. It explicitly says even in the 9th month, when it's a fully formed fetus, almost a baby, because I'm only call a baby really when it's born.
Yeah.
But if it's a fully formed fetus, still it has the designation of a rodef, as long as it's not an independent, where it's breathing on its own, it's eating on its own, it's drinking on its own, then you can't touch it. Once it comes into the world, that's it. It has all rights and responsibilities of a human being. And even if the mother is going to die, so be it. You can't touch the baby anymore. But while the baby is still within the mother's womb and is not an independent human being, it's considered a rodef.
Wow.
So,
so in today's, obviously since the technology's changed a lot.
Yes.
Obviously in the last, especially the last, probably 50 years or so. And now babies can survive, at 24, 25, 26 weeks.
We have one in our family.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, 25 weeks.
And so in that case, why would, and so considering that babies can live outside the womb so early, potentially, and as they develop more, it's obviously a higher percentage chance. Why would abortion be acceptable in that case as opposed to inducing delivery?
So let me get this straight. The child is,
let's say 32 weeks.
32 weeks.
Right.
It's threatening its mother's life.
Right.
You have a chance that you could save the fetus and the mother.
Yes.
You would do that.
Correct. You do that.
You would do that. Sure, of course.
Yes.
So
of course.
So the abortion is the absolute last case.
Absolute last
scenario.
Resource, of course.
I want to say something that is kind of connected to everything we're talking about so far. When I was mentioning to my sister that we were going to have this conversation, she brought up a really interesting point that I never thought of. And she said, we talk about abortion today like it's nothing. We never describe what actually happens in an abortion. We never say that, they I don't know, use a vacuum to suck out, a baby's body from the mother's womb, or they dismantle it piece by piece and pull it out. We don't articulate what it is. And I think there was a lot of fear in the women's movements over the years because women were treated poorly and women died trying to get, life-saving treatments, and they were denied. And so they did this huge pendulum swing all the way over to one side where we don't talk about abortion in a normal way. And I think what you said about requiring counseling or having, women talk it through is it's going to take such a culture shift to make that to make it normal. And it's so important, I think, because I, I'm not maybe as extreme as you, or I think Jay also, like, you guys maybe are more pro-life than I am, because I feel more in the way that I think a woman should. I hate saying choose. It's not that. I think that there are more circumstances where an abortion may be appropriate. I don't know.
I understand.
But especially young people need counseling. They need to understand what's happening. They need to understand what it's going to do to their bodies, what possibilities will happen down the line, what regrets they might have in 20 years or 5 years. But we don't talk about it normally.
Of course not. Because we have a position, and certainly among secular Jews and liberal Jews, that reproductive rights is a Jewish value.
Right.
It's not a Jewish value.
Right.
Reproductive rights is not a Jewish value.
Oh,
okay.
I'm going to report you to the NCJW.
Yes, please do that. And every time I walk by that sign at the JCC, I look at it and I give a class right across from it, and I see it. It's not a Jewish value.
Right.
Reproductive rights. Reproductive rights is our last. Is a resort.
Right.
That's what it should say. Reproductive rights is a last resort to a terrible circumstance.
Right.
You're in a terrible circumstance. You're going to need an abortion. Yes. We, the American people, have said, yes, we agree. You should have an abortion. But not that, hey, you know what? I'm 17 and I'm going to go out and I'm going to have fun and I'm just going to do it, whatever I want to do. And then I'm just going to go into a clinic and have it vacuumed out.
Right.
This is not a Jewish value.
Right.
I mean, it's not a substitute for birth control. Right. And we've made it that way. Right. We've made a substitute for birth control. Hey, there's no ramifications. You'll just go in there and have an abortion. I mean, please, that is not a Jewish value. I'm sorry. Jewish value is, unfortunately, we are in a terrible situation. Terrible circumstance. We need to go through with this. The Torah says, okay,
right,
do it. Get counseling before, get counseling afterwards. But chaval,
right,
it's woe to us
right,
for having this. Not, hey, we're all going to drive you. We have vans, abortion vans. Here, just jump in, and we'll drive you to the closest clinic.
I don't mean to laugh, but that's actually a thing.
It is. Of course it's a thing. Yeah. And then we're going to stand there. We're going to protect the clinics. No, look, I am totally against violence.
Yes.
And because these right-wingers are crazy. They're crazy. We have nothing to do with them. There's no equivalency with what I'm saying to these people that are blocking these clinics and threatening these abortion doctors.
Yeah.
They are evil, and they need to be jailed if they do something illegal. This is not our position at all. Our position is simple. Life is sacred.
Right.
The fetus is alive. It's not a human being, a full human being, but it's not nothing either. So take that seriously. And if you have to go through it, okay, we want to have abortion legal in America for those people that need one, that truly need one.
Yeah.
So I guess not that anybody cares about my opinion, but I'll give it anyway, because I have a microphone in front of me. So, but Haile kind of mentioned this about my stance, but I think, my I don't know, my thought process, my conversion over time might be potentially of interest to some people, probably not. But I think, for me, I was always just a very straight line. Yeah. Woman's body, it's a living thing, but it's not an equivalent life of a living person. So women can kind of do what they want. And I don't think I was never, believed in late term abortions and those sorts of things like that. But I was probably in the camp with the vast majority of Americans that just sort of said, all right, after this time period, no, before this, yes.
Right.
But I'll tell you a couple of things that really changed my perspective on this. I talked about the first one earlier, which was all of the miscarriages that we suffered through. And one of the things I was thinking about in the midst of sort of going through this is there are people, and this isn't what you said, Rabbi, but there are people out there who say, well, it's just like a clump of cells, or it's just whatever it is, and I appreciate your point, Rabbi, about calling it a fetus, and I understand where you're coming from. I think some people call it that so they can avoid calling it a baby,
right?
As opposed to giving it the name of a baby, which more directly is connected to a living thing. But when I was going through this with the miscarriages, I never told anybody this before, but I started thinking about if this isn't a living thing, then why am I upset about this? Right? If what people have told me throughout my life that this isn't an equivalent life to people you can see and talk to every day, then I shouldn't be so upset about this thing happening. But if it is legitimate and it is a living thing, then why should it be treated any differently than any other person that you can see walking around?
Right.
And so that's the number one thing that really started to get me thinking a lot about the idea of abortion and the value of should we perceive the value of a baby in the mother differently from just any other baby or any other person walking around. So I guess I'll see if you guys have any comments about that one. So let's just talk about that one. Yeah.
And then we'll talk about the next one.
Yeah.
But I want to say one thing and then you can take it. But I think part of it is that we view this being as a soul, not just a collection of cells, right? And
of course,
potential life that you are growing and I think you were mourning the potential lives that you are going to have. And I think when you think of it as a soul, it makes it, for me at least, it makes it a lot more real, even though a soul is not, you can't quantify, you can't feel it, you can't hold it, but a soul, I have a soul, you have a soul, and so does that collection of cells that is forming within a mother's womb. And so I don't know, that's how I feel. I'm not sure how you feel.
I agree with you on that. And I would just add that what happens is when the wife gets pregnant, there automatically becomes an attachment to the fetus. There's an expectation. There's a hope. You put so many different emotions within that fetus, which you don't do to anything else in your home. You buy a new bed, there's no attachment problem. I mean, okay, you know what? You think about you think about the good night's sleep you may get, right, but it's not an emotional attachment. Eventually, you get rid of that mattress and you'll get rid of that pillow. You're doing that, and that's everything. I mean, a car.
You spend a night in this hotel and tell me you're not attached to your mattress at home.
So as a human being, with all of our psychological hangups, we become emotionally attached to this thing, right, that is growing in mom's belly. And it's not a temporary attachment. This is a lifelong attachment that you're literally allowing all of your emotions to really become attached. I mean, every day you're thinking about it, you're worrying about it, you're monitoring your, the wife, you're getting her ice cream and pickles, when she gets grumpy. I mean, you're playing music to the baby. We're gonna call it a baby now, yeah, because it's different than, we're not talking about abortion anymore. We're talking about a loving couple that's expecting this baby. So you're investing a tremendous amount, of goodwill, to this baby, that's growing. And already in your mind, you've already envisioned what it's going to be like. You bought the crib, you have the baby clothes, even though in Orthodoxy we kind of shy away from that, because of an ayin hara. But nonetheless, most people, you have the crib, you have the baby clothes, you got the bassinet, everybody's excited, you're looking forward to it. So your emotional attachment to it is infinitely greater than any other emotional attachment to things that you have. So when you invest so much in something and it doesn't come through, It's
Right.
devastating.
Hurts, yeah.
It's absolutely devastating. It's hurtful. It's painful. It's damaging, and it's mourning. It's grief. It's real grief. So,
Yeah.
and I would say there's no difference between that kind of a grief and a grief of losing a real child, because especially if it's like a late term. I mean,
Yeah.
again, I'm not talking about, you lose it after 2 weeks. I mean, okay,
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
you don't have time enough to really, go through the process, of it and do that. But if you're talking about, a child that, you're in the 9th month, I mean, which, your expectation is, and the vast majority of children are born.
Mm-hmm.
And now this happens. How then is it not grief?
Yeah.
It's a tremendous amount of grief. For 9 months, you've invested every emotional ounce that you have into this thing, and all of a sudden it dissipates and it's gone. And it's not, again, it's even much worse than, losing something that you'd worked hard for. You did something and, and it didn't come through, because you can always replicate a job. You can't replicate a fetus. Even if you have another child, it's not that fetus.
Right.
It's another child. So it's a different child, and the hopes and the goals and the pleasure and the expectations that you had with this is gone. It's vapor, and that's painful. Very painful.
Does the Talmud, or is there any prescription for how to deal with miscarriages versus just the death of a child? Is there anything recommended to happen after a miscarriage?
It's interesting, because the laws of mourning don't apply until the child is at least 1 month old. 1 month.
Oh, really?
Meaning, even if the child is born and it doesn't survive a month, there's no mourning. There's no shiva. The shiva only takes place. It probably had to do a lot with child, survival, records.
Sure.
A lot of people lost children in childbirth. I mean, but so it's called a nafel. It's not called a human being. It's called a nafel. It's like a sickly child that didn't make it. That didn't make it. That does not mean so. We're only talking about from a strict halachic perspective, which means from a strictly legal perspective of what you are responsible to do according to Jewish law. Has nothing to do with emotional, psychological well-being. It has nothing to do with that, because there are parents that will suffer more with a stillborn than other parents will suffer with the death of a child. Mm-hmm. It's like who could measure that? There's no grief meter. When you sit there, you just put something on your arm and this guy, he has a lot of he's got a lot of grief, to him. So there's either both are devastating. The loss of a fetus, a miscarriage, and the loss of a real child. But in Jewish law, the fetus does not have the status of a living, independent human being as far as shivas, because you can't kill it. I mean, again, don't get me. You can't touch it. But if it passes within the month, it was kind of reckoned to be already a sickly child, and you don't sit the shiva period out.
It's interesting, because I think there is a cutoff. I don't know how many weeks it is or how the rabbis determine when a parent is responsible to name the baby and to bury it properly and give it a bris if it's a boy.
Yes.
It's not always the same. I'm not sure.
But if it has the form of a baby.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if it has the form of a baby.
So anywhere past like 6 months or
probably.
Right. Okay.
You're gonna have to check it. But
you have to go.
But that's as painful and as hurtful and as emotional devastation as anything.
I do want to push you on that one thing though, because I know someone who lost a child, an adult child, and went to a grief session for parents who were grieving, and one of the people there had a stillborn, and she was talking as if, she was in the same boat as everyone there who had lost, a 12-year-old, a 25-year-old, or whatever. And this parent was pretty frustrated and felt that it wasn't the same thing. And we're not in a grievance Olympics here trying to make a a difference between, I'm not trying to make a hierarchy, but I do think that there is a difference between losing a child that you meet and you get to know and you spend, hours and time raising versus, and I'm saying this as a woman who I understand the deep grief of losing a baby before they're born, but I do think there might be something different.
So this can only be adjudicated by the person that's suffering the grief.
Right. That's true.
You cannot tell me that how I should grieve more or less.
Right.
To the outside society, we've already established halachic precedents.
Right.
Yes, you're right. A child that's a stillborn does not have the same kind of grieving period that a 6-year-old would have.
Right.
You're absolutely correct. But that's only talking again about a strict legalistic definition of grief. When it comes to emotional devastation, no one has a right to say. And now, could you say, well, you're overdoing it? Get over it.
Right.
I mean, so someone that lost 2 children versus 1 child should say to the person that lost 1 child, well, at least you only lost 1 child.
Point,
I lost 2 sons in the war. You only lost 1 son. Well, the Sullivans lost 4 sons in the war.
Right.
So they should be like on the Mount Olympus or the Mount Rushmore of grievers because you lost 4 sons. But it's not fair. I mean, because in grief, it's so individualized how each person, some people...
Yeah. Well, also, I think it makes a difference if someone has, let's say, like in Jay's case, multiple miscarriages and never ends up with a child, or, only ends up, let's say, with 1 child when they wanted more children versus, I know people who have 10 kids who had 3 miscarriages. It's different.
Yeah, of course it's different. Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't want to do the Olympics of grief, but I think there is a difference. Somebody who was
when you say, come on, let's understand this. Let's understand what you're saying over here. Okay, when you're saying something, but let's unpack what you're saying. Okay, when you say there's a difference, what do you mean there's a difference? In what sense? Like the expectations of the mother with 10 children to get off the floor and not be in a fetal position, so you have a right to say that to her, versus a mother that has 1 child is in a fetal position? Are you saying? I mean, but who gives you the right?
Resiliency, I think, also.
Yes.
To show some resiliency.
So you're demanding that society tell this mother, hey, you know what? Come on, get off the floor. You have 10 kids. You just had a miscarriage, loser. No, come on, you have 10 kids. Get off the floor.
It is sad. I'm not saying it's not sad. I'm just saying that. It's a difference.
So what you're saying is that to the mother of 10 children, you'll only send a card.
Right.
To the one that has 1 child, you'll make a phone call. Okay, I get it.
No, but I will say though, I understand Chailea's point to some degree because
I get it too. Of course.
Well, I think even with what we went through, and like when my wife and I got married, we said we want to have as many kids as we can. And we ended up with 1, and that's fine. But I have thought about before, if we hadn't had any kids, I think it would have been significantly more difficult.
Yes, I agree.
Mentally,
but remember this. This is you. Looking at you. This is you, Jay, saying this, and we would all respect that.
This is why you're a rabbi, because you have sympathy for people, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't feel so bad for them. I'm just kidding, by the way, everyone. I do feel.
No, she doesn't.
Yes, I do.
No, she doesn't. I
do. Listen, I'm a woman. Okay, I'm the only woman on this panel.
We're actually questioning that.
No, I will say.
Because I will say in the beginning when Jay said that, about the article that he was reading about how men. Lost. I wanted to say, let's understand what this means. It's not men who are pregnant, because today men can get pregnant. It's not men who lost children. Okay, it's men whose spouses or girlfriends have lost. Okay, I just wanted to make that clear.
No, but I will say, as a woman,
yes,
I'm going to use my woman card right now.
Yes,
that it is very difficult. I know for myself. I mean, thank God I didn't suffer from any late miscarriages or anything like that.
Right.
But I multiple times thought I was pregnant, even if it was for a short time, and then it wasn't a pregnancy.
Yeah, okay.
And even in those few days, I was like, you already calculated when is 9 months
Sure.
and what am I going to name the baby and blah, blah, blah. Like in those,
Mhm.
in that week or even week and a half, I had already developed a relationship with something that didn't even exist within me. So I'm not disregarding people's women, especially their emotions around this, but I don't know. I'm just saying, I think it's,
I think
I
it's
think we
very.
do need
I
some
understand.
resiliency.
There's two standpoints from society, from outside in. Of course, we would look at someone that lost a child, like
Yeah.
a teenager or a young adult versus someone that had a stillborn. We would say, yeah, of course. Look, you didn't get to know the stillborn. There wasn't that
Right.
much of attachment. But that's only from an outside, and as an
Right,
individual,
right.
I would allow that person to grieve as much as they possibly need. Now, if someone came to my office and said, "Look, I have several children and I'm grieving," my counseling would say, "Look, your kids need you. You have a family. You're responsible for them as well.
Right.
So you have to, get your act together for the rest of your family. I mean, that's also a responsibility. I understand that this baby was a baby, and whatever, however you want to call it, but you have other responsibilities as well.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's. But as far as grief is concerned, it's a personal matter.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question about the soul of an unborn child. So in Judaism, we believe that everyone has a soul and the soul has a mission, right, on earth. We've talked about it, I think, on previous episode.
Right.
And that, even if a person is alive for a very short time, we believe that they've completed whatever mission they have. Is it the same with an unborn child? Like, does a fetus that, because we believe there's a soul. I mean, I know I learned that for the first 40 days after conception, that's when the soul is sort of born into the cells or whatever. And you have 40 days to pray. I mean, I know this sounds silly, but pray for what gender you want it to be. You only have 40 days because once it's 40 days after conception, it's
settled.
Right?
It's settled.
According to Jewish law.
Yeah.
So is there a mission?
And the president.
And the president. But is there a mission that an unborn child has that they can complete even if they're never born outside of the mother?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because the soul comes in stages.
Okay.
If a fetus has a soul because it's a living thing, but then when it's born, an additional soul comes into it that gives it actual independent life. Doesn't have independent life. Then at 13 or 12, it gets an additional soul, like Yetzer Tov, which pushes it on to do. So the soul comes in different stages. So it's certainly a fetus, even if it's a stillborn, had a mission down here on earth. Unfortunately, the mission ended quite quickly, but there was a purpose why it came down here. Unfortunately, we don't know why. You have to be a great tzaddik to be able to know these things. But without question, there was something there.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to come back to one of the other things I was mentioning earlier about one of the other things that sort of changed my thinking about this. And actually, Haile, you hit on the cultural topic about this a little while ago. And so we probably remember back in, maybe, whenever it was, early 2000s, when Hillary Clinton was running for president, and she had her whole thing about abortion was safe, legal, and rare.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it was specifically on the rare thing, right? And the rare part of that equation is an inherent admission that abortion is not a good thing, right? Because otherwise, why would you include rare? Right. You wouldn't include rare in that if it was something that's, sort of like a morally neutral thing, right? The whole point is it's sort of a necessary evil if it has to happen.
Right. I like that. Yeah. Necessary evil.
Whereas now we've got to the point where you have, people at, the Academy Awards talking about how wonderful it was they had an abortion because they wouldn't have the career they had. And people talking about, shout my abortion, and these types of things. And, to me, to go from saying abortion is a necessary evil to be something to be proud of and almost be like it, I don't know, it elevates you to a higher status in society somehow, to me is just such a retrograde retrograde concept, and is such a horrible direction for society to have moved in, and to really diminish what life is. That has really, that's probably the second thing that's really changed my opinion about abortion, is how our society seems to think life is so cheap and sort of throw away, like, other things in our lives.
It reminds me of a story. While Jay was speaking, story popped into my head. There is a concept of not giving charity at night, Kabbalistically. I mean, I know it's the forces of Gvura, of judgment, is at night, so you're not supposed to give. So one time, the Rebbe, before he was the Rebbe, when he was still the son-in-law of the previous Rebbe, gave charity at night and was chastated. Is that the word?
Chastised.
Thank you. Chastised. In Quebec, we say chastated, but the French,
sure.
Chastised.
Sure.
Chastised by a certain individual, saying, "Hey, you don't know that you're not supposed to give charity at night." Well, he felt a little uncomfortable, so he went up to his father-in-law and he told him the story that I was giving charity, and someone came over and chastised me. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, his father-in-law, says that guy probably doesn't give charity during the day either. So don't worry. I mean, if his criticism was you shouldn't give at night, he probably doesn't give during the day either. This what Jay is describing is exactly what I'm thinking about these people that are honoring abortions. They don't respect human life anyways.
Right.
Probably, if you don't respect a fetus inside, a growing fetus inside a mother's womb that is a living entity, then and if you're joyous about ending its life, then you don't really care about individuals either. So I'm not going to be thrilled that when you're standing up there, you're talking about genocide or something, because you don't care, because there could be a genocide going on here in America that you're applauding,
right?
And you're applauding.
Right.
So.
Right.
Well,
isn't there
Jay is absolutely correct.
Yeah, fine. He's right. But
for once.
Isn't there something in this discussion, though, about the broader issues that we have in our culture around family, right? Like, if young women, and and even women my age, let's say, like, if there was a stronger sense of community, more built-in support for women who were, unexpectedly found themselves pregnant or whatever, whatever the case is, or even a woman who's in a marriage that is really difficult. Like, we just don't have that kind of support structure. And so a lot of it's hard for us to talk about telling women to go through with the pregnancy when they're all alone or they don't have the right help around them. So it's sorry to be super liberal on this, but but I do think that the abortion issue is much bigger than just saying that women shouldn't have an abortion. There has to be much more scaffolding around support for women so that they could have babies. Because it's hard. It's really, really difficult. And especially, look, I think teen pregnancy is down by, 70% or something, a crazy number.
Yeah.
In the last 20 years, it's insane. Even
it
could be even higher than that. It could be 90%.
You know why?
Because they're not having sex.
Right. Teenagers are not having sex.
Right.
It's not because morality has changed and people have found Jesus. No. It's not like the Bible. I see these two women, the Bible readers. They're very popular now. Make the Bible great or something. What's MAGA? Make the Bible great again. They have this podcast. I saw them on on some show.
We should have them on.
I think they were on Fox News. Shockingly, they were on Fox News, and these two women found Jesus, and they're so chirpy and happy, and we found Jesus, and we're going straight to heaven with Jesus, and So it's not because because society has gotten more moral. And appreciate that. Say, kids are not having sex anymore. Why should they? They have a phone.
We're identifying a lot of different issues.
Yes.
But you brought that up. You brought it up.
It's true. You got no one to blame but yourself.
We didn't mention anything about teen pregnancies.
I'll bring up one other thing also. And this actually, I was going to bring this up anyway, but actually something you said, Rabbi, is actually helps me rationalize this a little bit more. When you talked about it biblically, or Talmudically, when if someone does something to a woman and kills the fetus, it's not death penalty, it's a fine or something.
Monetary compensation.
Monetary compensation. And this is, when I really started thinking about this more, there was another dichotomy that really bothered me, was when you have abortion versus, if a woman is murdered, who's pregnant, or you do something to a woman and who's pregnant and the baby dies, right? Yeah. There have been, a lot of cases where I think I might be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. Like Scott Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was convicted on 2 counts of murder. I believe, right? Yeah.
I think so.
And so here's my issue with that. The only difference, in most cases, life of the mother is different, but the only difference between a woman choosing to have an abortion and that being okay, and someone being convicted of murder when they murder a pregnant woman, is, did somebody want the baby?
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only difference. Right. And to me, you cannot have society that determines the value of life on if somebody wants it.
Right.
Because what is to stop somebody? Why can't, if that's the standard, why can't I go up to some homeless guy,
right,
who nobody knows, nobody cares about? I can just kill him, right?
No one wants him.
Right. Nobody wants him, so why can't he just walk into
society? Society doesn't want him either.
Right. Yeah. But
you'll be doing a mitzvah.
Right. That can't be the standard. Like, you cannot. That is not a standard that a society can exist with. And so either it's a living thing that has rights or it doesn't. I feel like society is in this liminal space where it's up for grabs if the mother wants it or somebody wants this baby. And I just don't know how you have a society that lives with that dichotomy.
I think both you and Chayle are both right. I think our general stance towards a fetus needs to change. We need to appreciate it more, that it is a living entity. And I think that your point, Chayle, of building a safety net around the mother is also valid.
Yeah.
It's also valid, because if we're going to make demands on the woman to go through with this, society is going to make demands. Society has to step up to the plate, because if you look, it's very interesting, because the people that are pushing mostly anti-abortion are conservative and conservative Christians, religious Catholics. They're very much yet when it comes to social services, they're the first ones to cut social services.
Right.
They're the fiscal conservatives. She doesn't need, let her go get a job. You can't have both, my friend. You can't have both. If you're going to have the mother have the baby, you better make sure that there are services available for her, for daycare, right, first step, whatever it's called, in that little, where kids go to school for free.
Head Start.
Head Start. You better have a number of programs to help the mother. WIC, right, is food for women, infants, and children. You better have homes. For you need to have a social structure to take care of these ladies if we're going to demand it. So I think it's not. We're not. It's not binary. It's not binary. We need both.
Right.
We need both. Yeah. But one should not stop. Because we don't have one, means we shouldn't stop the other.
Right.
We need to educate the people, I believe, about the sanctity of life, and at the very same time, ensure that there's necessary steps to making this mother understand, hey, if I go through this, I'm not going to be alone.
No, it's interesting. There's a hotel in London. It's a kosher hotel. It's called the Pillar. It's gorgeous. I stayed there. It's like all brick. It looks like an old monastery. It has like gardens in the middle. And it used to be a home for unwed mothers of American girls that were taken from here and brought over to live in that home. And they would have their pregnancy there, deliver their child, and then they would come back to America and nobody would know or whatever, But we don't.
they would just come back and say, "Hey, look what I found in London."
I adopted.
No, they adopted the babies out. That was the point. Sorry, I didn't say that part. No, I didn't say that part.
That makes much more sense.
I was wondering when we came back with.
No, they would adopt the babies out, but we've made. I mean, this is another issue that I don't know if we have time to get into, but we've made adoption so difficult and complicated and complex that's also not an option for a lot of people. But here, like this is probably 100 years ago, that this happened. That these girls would come, have a baby, and families who couldn't have children or who wanted more children would come and adopt a child, and everybody would. I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't without fault and there weren't problems, but it did seem to at least take care of that issue to a degree. We don't have that anymore.
I don't know if we even have orphanages anymore.
No.
Do we have orphanages here? There used to be. There used to be situations where we had orphanages. This is where children now, unfortunately, lost their parents.
We have foster parents now,
but,
I think
orphanages are where children who lost their parents. We're not talking about people that just gave their children away.
Right.
Maybe your parents died and you had nowhere to go. Society would take care of you. We raised you. We educated you. Maybe you got lucky and got adopted. Out of an orphanage, but maybe just with a few more minutes, maybe we could go back to the very issue that Jay brought up in the beginning about the article. I don't know if we've even touched about the article that Jay was referring to.
Yeah, not really.
Here's where we get to center the men.
What does society say? Because we're so worried.
The whole point of this episode is centering the man. So
it's all about the men here. What does society say about men who've lost a child, whether stillborn or whether it was an abortion or whether it was your wife, whether it was your girlfriend? I mean,
well, can I start with a question?
Yes.
According to Jewish law,
yes.
When a woman decides to have an abortion, does the father have any rights to say, like, I don't want you to have an abortion?
Well, think about it. A woman will only have a right if her life is in. So.
Oh, you're saying in Jewish law.
Jewish law.
Right.
So it's not even a question. It's not like I'm choosing to have this abortion free willingly, and the father says no, you can't have it. No, I don't think that would work. Within Judaism, but I think the article was a very sad. It was, to me, very, very sad article, and it because we don't think about it. You see, the mother will get a tremendous amount of sympathy. We're always going to go to the mother, and we think of her as the sole deliverer of life, and then the grief is all on all on the mother. But we don't realize that there's another partner involved here, an emotional partner. Yes, physically, yes, it's true. They don't carry the same burden, as the mother does. But emotionally, I mean, whatever we've discussed before, I mean, you invest so much into it. But yet society, until now, I never even thought about it until Jay sent the article around. I mean, Jay sent the article around that we completely disregard the father's feelings. Not in a sense of grieving. If God forbid, if two parents lose a child, yes, I understand that's equally because both of them raised it. Yes, both of them put into it. I get it, but specifically of a stillborn and prior. When it's only in the mother, it's still there. No one even thinks about the father. Who cares? Get over it.
I'll say this. So I told Chayle this. I was texting with her earlier. I said that after reading the article, I actually sent a message to Kat, and I hate this. I hate this term generally, but I think for me in this circumstance it was appropriate. This whole concept of like being seen. Like I hate that term, but I do have to say, after reading the article, it felt like,
Yeah. No, we get
seen.
it. You felt seen.
Yeah.
You felt seen. I mean, and again, at first reaction, I could see someone saying, you know what, come on. This is a product of a new society where everybody's feelings have to be reckoned with. This is this whole culture here in America that I have to be heard. Yeah, you didn't carry it, okay? You didn't carry it. You participated for whatever it was. Thank you very much. You gave the raw material, as she writes in there. Have a wonderful day in Kashmir. Bug off, okay?
Right.
Bug off. Let her have her moment. Why are you intruding? And that's traditionally the way we always thought about it. Is why are you intruding on her space? This is her world right now. But we're coming to understand, just like we're trying to understand with mental illness, we understand it's a whole new world. I mean, a suicide was once viewed as a criminal act, a major sin against Judaism. We wouldn't bury you in a cemetery. We would, but we've come to realize that someone who commits suicide is not well. I mean, is something wrong with him. So we've come a long way in understanding, mental illness and and needs, psychological needs of people. And this is one thing that is a brand new. I mean, to me, it was brand new. I don't know where it goes in the future. I mean, I read the article, and I'm not sure if you start establishing men's grieving centers for this. But it is certainly something that needs to be addressed, because till now, I'm guarantee you, it was never thought of.
What it made me think of is how much women need to do some work. I know it sounds crazy to say this, but we have to do some work to make sure that in our own grief and in our own moments of, sadness, that we're making sure that our partners and the men involved in that life are also being taken care of. Because I think a lot of times we become very selfish, and I don't mean selfish in a bad way, but you become very self-centered in your own grief, and you become all about you, and you center the whole world around yourself. And I think that it's important for women, and it's a hard thing to say, because a lot of women will probably scream back at me and say, oh, that's not their responsibility in the moment. But actually, if you love someone, and if the person is someone that you actually care about, which I hope you do, right? Like, it should be a top priority to make sure that you're sharing those feelings and the grief together. I mean,
grieving is not a zero-sum game.
Right, exactly.
Okay? There isn't a certain amount of grieving that goes on in a family where you get 10 shares, and in this case, she gets 10 and you get 0.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Right.
That's not what grief is. Grief is an emotional reaction to a stimuli.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that if you're showing concern for your partner, it's taking away from your own grief. It's diminishing your own grief. It's just like, if you sit Shiva for 7 days and then go to work, it doesn't mean that your loss is any deeper than someone who doesn't go to work after 7 days. I mean, it's just, so grieving. So women, like you said, should be able to allow the partner in at this time, instead of just blocking him out and just ridiculing the fact that, what do you know? Did you carry it? What did you have to do with it? I mean, but like Jay expressed very, very beautifully, that no, there's a strong emotional attachment. There is, and you can't deny that. And I think that you're right, Haile, when you say that women should be able to, and I don't see the damage done to them. It's not like, God forbid, we're taking something away from them by acknowledging that the partner also has feelings towards this.
Right. Well, it's just, I think a lot of times women feel like we carry the burden of all of, which is true physically, right? I mean, from menstruation through pregnancy, through nursing. I mean, there's so much on, hormonally we're carrying it. But this is the piece I think that's important, is that when you're in a healthy relationship, you can recognize that all along the way, even through the other parts of it, the man is a part of it to a degree, right? And a very important degree.
Yes.
It's just your partners. Like, that should be, it should be no brainer in a way that you grieve together and that you celebrate together and all the things. I mean, but I think we are told a story as women. I hate to say it, but I think we're told a story that we get splinters too, men. We also suffer. It's true, but I think we're told we get splinters and then and ingrown toenails. And we know what your pain is like. We understand what the pain is. Sure,
we understand
and I guess also the I don't know if irony is the right word here, but if women are choosing well, and they're choosing, and when I say well, I mean, the purpose of getting married in large part is to have children. If women are choosing the right men to marry and have children with, then those men are probably going to be more susceptible to like this emotional connection to a fetus.
Right.
Because if you think about the opposite, would you, I know you don't have any daughters, Chaya, but, I guess for Rabbi, you wouldn't want your daughters to marry a guy who, if this happened to them, they were kind of like, what's the big deal? Who cares? Right. You wouldn't, you wouldn't want your daughter to marry somebody like that. Yeah. So I guess the point being is, if women are choosing the right men to have families with, it's probably more important that they have the kind of relationship where they can talk about these things, because, he'll feel that more.
Right. It's interesting. I mean, I'll say something, I don't know, it might, whatever, but my grandparents had a stillborn child. And after, they never had any more kids. Like that was they had 3 children and then they had a stillborn. And the interesting thing is, when I've talked to both of them about it, both my grandmother and my grandfather, and I think that my grandfather showed a lot more emotion when he spoke about it. It hurt him so deeply. And this was, when I spoke to him about it, it was probably a good 40 years after it happened. And he would get emotional, and he told me the name of the baby and where they buried her and, all of the details. And he remembered all of it like so vividly. And my grandmother, and a lot of this is personality. My grandfather had a much more, gregarious personality, very emotional. My grandmother, she was cerebral. She was very cerebral. And she told me, and she said, yes, it was hard, but she got over very much like, that's in the past, and whatever. Thank God I have 3 healthy, beautiful children, and and so it's just an example of like, it just depends also on a person's personality. And for my grandfather, it hurt him for the rest of his life, and he grieved probably for that child. And you just don't know. You never know who's hurting.
This just proves my point that I was thinking. You brought up a perfect example of your grandfather and your grandmother. Yeah. Both lovely people. I love them like my parents. Yeah. But your grandfather loved people. Yeah. He loved people. Yeah. He loved them. They loved him. So the loss of this child is an extension, as we've talked before. People that love people will love, or just have a tremendous amount of love. Your grandmother, on the other hand, had very little patience for people. I mean, let's be honest. She loved her family. She loved your grandfather, but she didn't have much patience especially for fools. She was a brilliant woman, and she didn't suffer fools very easily. Your grandfather could sit with these idiots for hours discussing nothing. And your grandmother had no patience. She wanted to read. She wanted to listen to her opera and goodbye. Yes. So it's a personality thing. So people that love life are going to experience this much harder. People that don't love life will parade themselves around and dance with their abortions because they don't love life. Right. I mean, and your grandfather was a perfect example of that. Yeah. Perfect example. Yeah. So it doesn't shock me that this was his reaction 40 years later. Yeah. He loved.
Okay, wow.
This was this was almost like a regular podcast. I mean, this was like wow, like yowza.
Listen, these are tough subjects, but I think they're good and interesting and important to talk about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure our listenership will be cut in half after my incoherent ramblings. My opinions.
This was important. No. This was an important one. But abortion is always a hot topic. People are always going to be emotional about it. I remember giving a class once, and I had 2 people that almost got to fisticuffs over it because one was pro-life, one was pro. When I say pro-life, I mean extreme pro-life. Another one was extreme pro-choice, and neither could see the other. They neither wanted to see the other person's perspective. They were just shouting at each other in class. And I'm sitting there. I'm saying, both of you calm down because we're just having a rational discussion when no one's having an abortion tonight here. Okay, take it easy. I left my coat hanger at home. So sit. Well, how else would I do it?
That is a terrible joke.
But how would I do an abortion at a classroom? Well, we don't have surgical equipment. No. So I told them both to sit down, take it easy, and relax. But it's a hot topic discussion, and that's what
we before we go, and we have to go, but one thing we did not address, and I can imagine that many people are going to ask, and that is in Jewish law about rape. Is a person
rape is prohibited?
I know
it is prohibited from rape.
I understand that, but a woman who gets pregnant through a rape, is there any differentiation halachically about that pregnancy, or is it the same? I don't
think so.
Okay.
I can't give a definitive answer to that. Okay. Although I would just say, as we mentioned, in today's society, emotional, mental health, well-being is taken into consideration. Okay. So that may play a part, but I don't think that rape per se makes any difference in the abortion permissibility or forbiddenness in it. It's still whatever it is. Now you may not want to have it, you may want to give it away, but it's still, and incest is the same way. Right. Incest.
Okay. So I think the bottom line is everyone needs to have a rabbi or someone that you can turn to ask these hard questions, and you shouldn't make these decisions on your own. And we need to do a better job of educating people and changing the way we talk about life, I think, in general. Right? Does that sum it up?
I think that sums it up. Yep.
We have to be nicer to the men. I get it. I'm just kidding.
I'll always be nicer to the men. That's really what this is all about. Well, thanks everybody. Hopefully you stuck this out, and hopefully, most importantly, you'll come back next time.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks.